Yo, what's going on, guys? Crispy Flakes here. Welcome to Extra Crispy. For today's video, we are going to be reacting to the 8 greatest win-win trades in the last 15 years. Video by Austin Sweat. Link to his channel in the description below. So yeah, man, a win-win trade. Obviously, the most recent one would be Luka Doncic for Trae Young between the Hawks and the Dallas Mavericks. Just because it's like, you know, both those franchises seem happy with the player they have. Sometimes, you don't really see like the trades really pan out right away. I think the best case with that would have to be, like when the Lakers traded, like, I think it was like Kwame Brown for Pau Gasol, but also in that trade, the Memphis Grizzlies got the right to Marc Gasol. So it took a while, man, but, at first we were clowning the trade, but then it kind of was like a win-win situation, man. So here we go. Let's go ahead, hop into this video. But before we do that, if you can please drop a like on it and subscribe if you're new to the channel, guys. It really does help grow the channel so much. Thank you all so much for that. And here we go. Let's get it.
In past videos, we've looked at some of the worst trades in recent years, where one team came out as a clear winner.
What's the worst one, guys? Brooklyn Nets trading all the draft picks?
When things were all said and done. But now we're looking at the circumstance that's more rare than you'd think, where both teams come out of a huge trade as a winner. A trade where both stars thrived on their new teams, oftentimes playing better than they ever had before.
Kawhi Leonard,
which by far put both teams in a better position going forward. And
bro, didn't the Pacers trade him to the Spurs for like George Hill or something like that?
8 of these scenarios that went down within the past 10 to 15 years. So let's start by looking at number 1. Paul George for Victor Oladipo and DeMontis.
Yeah, definitely a win-win.
The early 2010 Pacers had some solid playoff runs, but after 7 years went by and the team still couldn't take things to the next level, Paul George finally requested a trade.
You might say, okay, he's actually a loser on this one, if you think about it.
To the Thunder for no reason at all. The two didn't fit in on their new team, so it made perfect sense to trade them to the Pacers for a superstar. It was risky for OKC though, because PG's contract was up after 1 year, but the trade went through, and instantly both sides played the best basketball of their careers. Victor Oladipo instantly became a 2-time All-Star and averaged 23.
Yeah, Paul George didn't stay though. That's
while Sabonis
makes kind of a loss, I would say,
and is now playing even better for Indiana as a starter to start this year. Not to mention, the two young stars have done a great job of leading the Pacers into the playoffs when healthy. While on the other hand, OKC was ready to win right away, and teaming up with Westbrook made PG want to stay in OKC, and it was a smart move because after
just not long enough though, right?
He had the best year of his career this past season, putting up 28 points a game, and was in the Defensive Player of the Year and MVP talks. And even though OKC traded him in the long run, out of Oladipo and Sabonis, they really ended up getting 2 years of chances with this duo, and now have Danilo Gallinari, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and 6 first-round picks.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Still got the draft picks
included in this video as a win-win trade all on its own, with how great it set both teams up.
That's a good point.
I just decided to include it here. It gave OKC great building blocks towards their future, and LA the super team they have today, because if they hadn't have gotten Paul George, Kawhi...
I guess I got a question for OKC fans. Would you rather have your current roster, with that trade with getting a Gallinari and Shea and all those draft picks, or would you rather have Victor Oladipo and Sabonis? I feel like that's like a good discussion to have right there. Man, y'all let me know in the comments section, but who would you rather have, like that one side or the other side?
Kawhi Leonard would have gone to the Lakers. Number 2, Luka Doncic for Trae Young.
This is gonna be out here.
Most of you probably won't remember this by now, but I will admit, in my 7 more worst NBA trades in the past 10 years video, I included this trade in there because it was halfway through last season before Trae started to really show what he's made of, and it was definitely too soon to include both Trae and Luka in that video. But now I'm including them in this one to make things right, and just because they deserve to be here anyways. Because during the 2018 NBA draft, the Atlanta Hawks took Luka Doncic 3rd overall.
Looks weird in that Hawks hat, man.
5th. Before the two teams swapped players. And as it turns out, the Dallas Mavericks and Atlanta Hawks both have clearly come out of this trade as winners. Things have worked out much better than they would have if Trae was on the Mavs and Doncic was on the Hawks. And both men...
I mean, I kind of disagree with that. I feel like if Trae Young was on the Dallas Mavericks, assuming they still trade for Kristaps Porzingis, that's still a deadly duo. And Luka, John Collins still would have been something pretty spectacular. I don't think these guys are great players because of where they're at. I think they're great players because of their work ethic and just kind of that they're great players. I think they would have been great no matter where they would have went.
Finished 1st and 2nd.
That's why I misunderstood that, but
last year. Sure, they're both basically point guards at this point, but before the draft, the Mavs weren't in a great position, and they needed a guy like Luka who could be a superstar, while the Hawks were in an opposite spot, because they were in a position where they were going to land a lot of talent, so they needed a guy who could really excel in more of a traditional point guard role. and they're both definitely living up to the hype right now, to the point where you can't even in the slightest say that either team made a mistake. Plus, drafting them both before last season led them to being.
But Luka's playing like an MVP. Let's be honest about that.
Now having 2 superstar caliber players, and the Hawks having a stacked young roster. Number 3, Jimmy Butler for Josh Richardson. This one goes right along with Kevin Durant getting traded for D'Angelo Russell this year. And yes, they just happened, but they gotta be at least mentioned in these win-win trades.
Okay.
I mean, starting first with the Jimmy and Richardson trade, it worked out great for everyone involved, and instead of Philly straight up losing Butler like what was expected, they got a potential.
I bet you D'Lo KD's gonna be on this video. That's just a prediction.
Star-level two-way player.
If we're going with this one, right?
Only 26 years old. Now, he's not going to break out as a star while on the 76ers, but he adds to them being as good as they will be, and so far, even though his stats don't show it as much, he's played a huge role for them. While on the other hand, Miami got the star that they wanted with this young roster, and cleared up the cap space to do so.
I guess, like, the way you gotta think about this video is, you can't really think about, like, who the better player is, because, you know, like, to me, if you're like, okay, Jimmy Butler, Josh Richardson, it's like, well, Jimmy Butler clearly is a way better player. But it's almost one of those cases where, you know, you just like, it's better to get something back than nothing at all. Where it's like, okay, it's like, yeah, the team could have just lost Jimmy Butler. But no, they were able to get Josh Richardson out of it. So it's like, you know, you got that going for you. I don't know, because like, that's why it's so hard to like, just talk about like win-win. Because sometimes people will be like, well, Jimmy Butler's a way better player. So therefore, you know, they won the trade. But it's like, yeah, but not really.
And now the team's looking great.
Like, yeah, I'm not saying he's not a better player, but
that much
you know,
better in the next couple of years while Jimmy's still under contract. And as for the KD and D'Angelo trade, it's the same thing.
Yep,
Both
exactly.
teams got what they wanted. The Warriors got their star for the future, and the Nets got the second piece of their super team. With Golden State's start, though, you might think that it would have been better for them to have just kept their cap space, so they could have just kept all the role players. But with Clay and Steph out now anyways, it really wouldn't have mattered.
D'Lo still has amazing trade value.
Young D'Angelo Russell or his trade value going forward is going to be a lot more valuable than role players in the next couple of years. Number 4, Shaq to Miami. Back in 2004, coming off of a 3-peat.
Oh, that was for like Lamar Odom and other pieces, I believe.
Expectations, and then losing to the Pistons in the NBA Finals.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Kobe and Shaq had to get away from each other, so Shaq was traded to the Miami Heat for Caron Butler, Brian Grant, Lamar Odom, and a draft pick.
Did Caron actually play on the Lakers?
For both teams. Now, while Shaq wasn't as dominant as he was for the Lakers and Miami, he was still by far the best center in the league and helped Dwayne Wade lead them to a championship.
Second best to Ben Wallace.
So it worked out for Miami, and while it took a little longer to work out for LA, it did because Lamar Odom played a huge part in helping Kobe Bryant win back-to-back championships in 2009 and 10 without Shaq. So this single trade gave both teams a new look, and one player that was eventually able to play a huge part in helping them take things to a championship level. Sure, you could say Shaq may have been more helpful, but overall this trade resulted in at least one title for both teams.
Yeah, they didn't just lose
Number
Shaq.
5, Pau Gasol for Marc Gasol.
Knew this was going to be on
As
there.
a lot of you may remember, back in February of...
At the time, it was Pau Gasol for Kwame Brown. Nobody knew Marc Gasol was going to be that good. Nobody knew that at all.
2008, Pau Gasol was traded for his brother Marc Gasol in what was thought of at the time as one of the worst trades really in NBA history. Because at the time, Pau was a 20-point-per-game scorer, a former All-Star, and had already set the Grizzlies'
Look how young he looks, man.
records
Damn.
for games played, minutes played, field goals made, free throws made and attempted, offensive, defensive, and total rebounds, blocked shots, and points in 6.5 seasons. And they traded him for Kwame Brown, Javaris Crittenton, Aaron McKee, and the rights to Marc Gasol, who the Lakers had just drafted 47th overall in the second round. But overall, Grizzlies GM Chris Wallace said that at the time the team was growing kind of stale. They were losing games and there wasn't really a lot of noise.
Yeah, nothing like Kwame Brown to bring back the ticket holders.
Leave when he was able to. So he made the best out of it and traded him to the Lakers, who he said by far had the best deal. And it surprisingly turned out to be great. At the time, Marc had just spent a few years playing in Spain and hadn't really made a name for himself. But once he got on the Grizzlies, that all changed. When he quickly developed into one of the better
champion
all-around
now.
centers
Unfortunately,
in the
not on the
NBA,
Grizzlies.
and played a huge role in the Grizzlies' deep playoff pushes. Nothing serious ever came out of it, but it gave them a chance. And probably a much bigger one than they would have had if they just would have waited until Pau Gasol walked when his contract was up.
Good point.
Speaking of Pau, as you know, it was a win for the Lakers because he played a huge part in helping them and Kobe Bryant win those 2 championships. Number 6, Kevin Love for Andrew Wiggins.
Really?
Now, originally, I was thinking that this was a lose-lose situation. I mean, Wiggins hasn't been who he was expected to be.
Definitely not a win-lose, because I still feel like Kevin Love was a great fit for, like, as, like, that third option for, like, LeBron and Kyrie. I feel like he played that role very nicely. Where if they would have kept Wiggins, I don't know how that would have turned out. I'm kind of curious how it would have, but I don't think it would have turned out to be a championship team. So, I don't know. That's a good one. It's a good one.
And neither is Kevin Love. Plus, Kevin was injured for most of the Cavs' playoff runs. And I mean, in the 2016 finals that they won, he really only averaged 8 points a game.
Yeah, but you help him get there.
I think we can still call it a win-win.
Help you get there, though.
Who knows? Even though Kevin wasn't the same player and didn't always have a huge impact on the court when it mattered, in the end, the Cavs traded for Kevin Love, he contributed to the team, and they ended up winning a championship.
Exactly.
Plus, everyone can agree they did a lot better than they would have with Andrew Wiggins on the team.
Would have been such an awkward fit.
Andrew Wiggins, the Timberwolves also came out as winners because sure, he's not as good as we thought.
He's playing good now.
I mean, he's not terrible. And also, in Kevin Love's last season with the Timberwolves...
See, we can see all these opinions on Andrew Wiggins now regressing. Before this season, everybody was saying how garbage Wiggins is, how inconsistent he is. And it's so funny how quickly a narrative can change in the NBA. Because, like, now Wiggins and the T-Wolves are playing pretty good basketball. And it's just like, okay, Wiggins ain't that bad. You know, it changes so quickly, man.
The team finished
so
40
quickly.
and 42. After trading him for Andrew Wiggins and Anthony Bennett, they finished 16 and 66.
Big yikes, man.
And sure, that's not a win, but it was just enough tanking for them to land Karl Anthony Towns in the next year's draft.
That's a good point. Okay,
So no
I'll give you
matter
that.
How good Wiggins is personally, without him, they probably wouldn't have gotten their hands on one of the best centers in the league.
Good point. Good point.
It really did pay off for both teams after all. Number 7. Anthony Davis for Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball, and Brandon Ingram. All right, here's
Especially the way
another
Ingram's been
just went
playing.
down, and we're seeing it play out right now, so I won't spend too long on it. But this trade is looking like it was a perfect move for both teams. The Lakers have looked great so far, and they're really looking like they're going to be as much of a threat in the playoffs as everyone expected. While on the other hand,
Are they first seed right now?
looking like a superstar for New Orleans to start the year. Things could change because a lot of players do start out strong, and not everyone stays consistent throughout the year. Plus, Zion coming back could affect Ingram, but right now he's living up to all the hype that he had when he got drafted. While Lonzo and Josh Hart aren't playing fantastic, but they definitely are playing better than they were for LA, which means that the trade worked out for everyone. And
yeah, it's hard
number
switching
8,
teams as
the
a point
Blake
guard.
Griffin trade to the Pistons.
Yeah,
By
buddy.
2017,
Yeah,
the original Lob City Clippers team had fallen apart. So Chris Paul was traded in the offseason, and it was surprising when halfway through the year, Blake was also traded to the Detroit Pistons. In a deal that sent him there for Tobias Harris, Avery Bradley,
I do miss
Boban,
Tobias.
and 2 future picks. And it worked out. Even though Harris led the Clippers to becoming a solid team, they saw the bigger picture and traded him for basically Landry Shamet, 2 first-round picks and cap space that they used to sign PG and Kawhi this offseason. The Clippers got rid of Blake and capitalized on the situation. As for Griffin and the Pistons, well, I won't say things have been fantastic for them since the trade. I mean, they were a little under 500 before he got there, and finished 41 and 41 with him last year.
This team's going to be dangerous once they're all completely healthy. It just might not actually happen. Because there's so much bitch-ass injury bugs on this Pistons team right now. Like, Reggie Jackson's out for a month. Derrick Rose, like, you know, he can be gone just like that. Blake Griffin, missed the beginning of the season. It's like, I really do think, man, this team would be really solid if they were just all healthy. And I just don't know if we're ever going to see that, you know? That's the thing.
But I will say that before the trade, the Pistons weren't an exciting team, and nobody wanted to willingly come play for them. But with bringing in a star like Blake, it helped put them in a position that's made them more attractive.
Don't speak
for
that
another
into
star to
existence.
join him. It hasn't worked yet, but they were able to bring in Derrick Rose and Markieff Morris so far. And if they can gather enough role players like that to play with Blake and Drummond, eventually they could become a real threat in the East.
Yeah,
Plus,
buddy.
It helped
Thank you.
revive and reinvent Griffin's career to the point now where he's been playing better than ever before. So I'd say it was definitely one for the Clippers, and based on the position they were in to where they're at now, it's a win for the Pistons too. And with that said, it's gonna wrap up.
Yeah, like Blake Griffin, if anything, is going to sell more tickets than Tobias Harris is. And I love Tobias Harris. I wish we could have kept him. Would have been a great small forward on this team with Blake Griffin at the 4, but, you know, you had to give up something to get something, right? But no, I thought these were all pretty good trades right here. Like I said, it all really comes down to your definition of win-win. You can't always just look at player talent, but just the situation at hand too, man. Hope you guys all enjoyed this video, man. Go subscribe to Austin Sweat. While you guys are down, hit that subscribe button on my channel. Hit that like button. Thank you all so much for watching. And peace out, my friends.